Hey everybody, Easi here, back in the garden again. Thanks for joining me. We've got a sunny, as you can tell, but cold, crispy day. So I'm back in the garden. We're going to do another The Garden Side chat with Easi. Today's episode, I want to talk about the higher level of the planning your garden stuff. It's that time of year, we can't do too much, but what we can be doing is planning and thinking about this garden season that's about to come up upon us. I thought today I would take us through a general what to think about when we're planning our garden, what we should think about before we order those seeds, before we order those seedlings, and start spending our hard-earned money on vegetables and such. So thanks for checking me out. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and you know it, I need you to smash the thumbs up, turn it blue. That helps get the video shown to more and more people. Let's get started. As you guys know, I like to think about things in a lot of the what, when, where, why, hows, all those sorts of things. So when it comes to planning out your garden, why would you want to plan your garden? What are you going to think about when planning your garden? How are you going to go about doing it? And where are you going to plant your garden? These are all factors that you can think about when you're sitting there in the winter time and you might not have a lot of stuff to be actively doing with your hands. You can be doing it in your mind. First thing is, why should I plan my garden out? Well, there's a bunch of good reasons to plan your garden. One of them is it's going to save you time. Time is something you don't get back. Time keeps slipping, slipping, slipping. Oh, I almost sang us a song there. That would have been embarrassing. Saves you time by decreasing the amount of watering you have to do if you have things really well spaced out, and you'll also decrease the amount of weeding and time you put into just maintaining and taking care of that garden. A better thought out space is going to be more efficient for you. I do have some other videos that talk about some of the spacing of your plants, so that can be tied into the overall plan quite easily. It saves you money. Saving money, I don't mind doing that. That's a good thing. How does it save you money? Well, you won't be buying unnecessary seeds or plant starts because you've already thought about the garden. You've thought about what's going to go in it. You're going to have checked if you're already growing. You're going to have checked what you grew last season and what you have left over in terms of seeds. And that will let you know exactly what you need to buy for the following season or the season we're about to go into. When we're thinking about what we want to plant as well, we're going to be a lot more strategic about what we buy. I found in my early days I'd get one of those seed catalogs in the dead of winter, and the first thing I'd do is crack it open and start smiling, and then I'd start getting a pen out like a Christmas wish list, and I'd start circling all these different seeds, plants that looked really interesting to me. By the time I was done, I was like a kid at Christmas, and I had circled probably 40 or 45 different seeds. And then I would end up buying not all of them, but a lot of them. And I wouldn't end up using all of them each year. I invariably ended up with extra seeds. Sometimes I didn't even get certain varieties into the ground. A lot of it was inefficient, and it did end up wasting some money. We don't buy extra seed, we don't buy unnecessary seed, we don't buy unnecessary starts. It's easier to plan out a garden in your mind or on paper, depending on how you like to sort things out, than to be standing there on the first day that you want to plant in the garden all excited to go, and you're looking at the garden saying, well, what do I put where? That's going to turn into you just start throwing things in, and there may not be a lot of thought put into where they end up, and you may have a lot of overcrowding. You may have things that are competing with each other, certain plants that aren't companions. You could create yourself a whole lot of extra work by doing that. And thinking about it beforehand, you have the time now to do that. You won't feel like you have the time at the beginning of spring when everything's just starting to get going and you got so much to do. That's not the right time to start thinking about, hey, what do I want to put where? Really, now in the dead of winter, as we're getting closer to spring, it's a perfect time to do that. It also, as you've heard me say before, it allows us to escape reality a little bit. And right now in 2020, 21, things are they're rough for a lot of people, and thinking about gardens is probably not going to make you feel bad. So again, throwing some hope, some brightness, some niceness, some fun, warmth, sun, you name it, just things to look forward to is what you will be doing by planning out your garden. It'll just make you feel better at the end of the day, which is never a bad thing. Next thing I think about when I'm planning a garden is going to be, what should I plant? What do I want to put into this garden? What kind of plants do I like? What kind of plants do I eat? What kind of plants do my kids eat? My family eats? I used to grow a lot of different things, and I would realize that some of them the rabbits ended up eating and the chickens. Felt like I was growing food for the animals. Really what it came down to is certain crops, although they're fun to grow and it's nice to grow a whole bunch of variety and all that, it really came down to, for me, what's getting eaten. I like to grow food, so let's grow food that people are going to snack on when they're walking by. Peas, cucumbers, even peppers. My kids are eating all sorts of things like that. I want to have readily available, yummy food for everyone. So that's something I think about when it comes to, what should I plant? The good stuff. Plant the stuff you like. You can also plant stuff you're interested in. So if you happen to be super into tomatoes, and that's all you're into, you might want to grow a couple varieties of it instead. Maybe do some cherry tomatoes, do some large tomatoes, try doing a bush variety, try doing a vining variety. There's lots of options, but think about what you're interested in, grow what you're interested in. It'll be that much more rewarding for you. How much space do you have? Are you growing in containers on a deck? Are you growing out in a big garden with acres? The plants you pick, you will want to think about, because if you're in a smaller spot, you don't want to be picking plants like pumpkins and melons and squashes, because one plant can really spread out. The classic example, I even got to tell my sister this one last spring, I guess. She was talking about growing zucchinis, and I suggested that she maybe just grow one. I used to grow several zucchini plants. Sometimes I'd do variety, yellow and green, and what would always happen, zucchini's the one, there'd be an overabundance. There'd be so much zucchini in the end. I'd have too much for me or my family to consume. And when I would go to try to even give it away, people were already in the zucchini timeout zone where they were like, I've had enough, thanks, don't eat any more. You can shred it, you can turn it into baking, etc. But think about the plants that you're putting in and how much space they take, how much will be produced off of them. What should I plant? That's going to have to do with how much time you have too. Some plants take a lot more effort and are time consuming than others. Consider that if time is something that you don't happen to have a lot of. Consider crops that are a little bit easier to grow. Things that come to mind for me, or not easier, just less time consuming, are going to be like your lettuces, your carrots. Things like that are quite simple. Potatoes are really simple. I've got a no-dig potato video here that I literally threw them on the ground, covered them a couple times during the season, watered them. That was about it, and they turned out great. That's something to consider when you're thinking about what you want to plant, is how much time and effort you want to put into the particular variety that you're growing. Lastly, when it comes to what you want to plant, think about what hardiness zone you live in. So by hardiness zone, what I mean is, when are your first and last frost dates? How long is your growing season? How much time do you have to grow your crops? Because that will also be something that influences what you plant and will become part of the plan of your garden. Next thing to think about with the plan of your garden is, how much do you want to grow? I kind of talked about that in the previous one, but what I mean by how much is really depends on your goals, your personal goals. Are you someone who wants to grow a little bit of a whole bunch of things to have the experience and a bunch of experiences and a bunch of things to try out? Or are you more someone that's interested in getting honed in and very good at growing specific crops? It's your choice. That's the cool part, and you may change your mind each season. That's the really cool part about gardening, is usually you always have another season to give it another shot. Think about that when you're thinking about how much you want to grow. How much do you use it? Is it something that you want to give away to friends? Is it something you want to turn into a crop that you sell? Garlic is an example. Sorry, shameless plugs left, right, and center, or above and above. For me, it's something that I've been growing and I've been giving it away, and I'm finally getting that to the size where I'll be selling it, creating a bit of a side hustle off of my garlic. So those are factors that will influence really how much of something you want to grow, how much of one variety. What I have found is that it is really easy if you have the space to grow too much of stuff. And again, if you have animals like rabbits or chickens, that's not a huge problem because they will consume that byproduct or the extra food coming out of your garden. So when you're thinking about how much to grow, also think about your time and your space. That's going to dictate a lot of it. A lot of it. So if you got a lot of time and a lot of space, you might want to grow a lot of food. If you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of space, you probably won't be wanting or you won't be able to grow as much food. The last thing when it comes to what to grow is consider whether or not you want to store any of your food over the winter and use it into the winter. I grow a lot of vegetables that we do use as we progress through the winter. I have potatoes stored, I have carrots stored, I have onions stored, garlic. These are a lot of the crops that we can keep eating as we go further along. So when it comes to how much of that I grow more of those crops so they can last longer over the season. You may not have the ability, you may not want to store your food over the winter or the fall, so you may not need to grow or may not want to grow as much food. Again, it's something to consider. Lastly, I would think about where you want to put your garden. If you're new to gardening, this is going to be your first season, that's super exciting, but it's also a little bit daunting, maybe, depends on your options. If you have options of where to put your garden or where to put your containers, then these are things you want to be thinking about now. They're going to be part of the overall plan of your garden. But you want to pick a good spot. It's pretty simple. Pick a good spot. Well, what's a good spot, Phil? Good spot would be somewhere that has access to sun. Go figure. A lot of the plants grow better with more sun. Within reason. Some don't love it. Really, when it comes down to it, you're trying to find a spot that's going to have at least 6 hours of sunlight during the day. You also want to have your garden close to a water source if you can. Think about that when you're thinking about where to put your garden or your containers. Is it fairly close to water? That's something you're going to be using, depending on how hot your climate gets, almost every day. You want to have that efficiency built in. You don't want to pack water further than you need to. Think about the location of the garden. Get it in a good spot which will have lots of sun and close to water. The third thing is, when we're thinking of where to put our garden or containers, put it as close to your house as you can. So you don't have to travel as far back and forth between the house where you tend to prep your food and the garden where you're growing your food. Even better, if you have this option, the closer to your kitchen, the better. All of this will make a big difference, especially if you're super into gardening and you do a lot of it, and you do a lot of work in the garden. You do want to create those efficiencies so you can spend more time doing the fun stuff you like to do with your garden or outside of gardening. Another tip when we're starting, especially if this is your first season or one of your first seasons, start small. Don't go big. It's tempting to want to just do everything all at once. I've been there, believe me. And it doesn't usually result in a super fun season because you have so much going on, so many different things happening. You're probably trying to learn on the fly some of these things, and invariably you can't spend enough attention on everything. There's going to be failures, there usually is. There might be more of them. It may be disheartening. So really, when you're starting out, think small, start in a smaller space, maximize that space before you then bump to a larger space. And the last thing to think about when it comes to where to put your garden, your containers, think about trees of all things, but there's a couple reasons. The shade factor, we talked about, you want to get 6 hours of sunlight at least, but it's also got to do with their roots underneath, and the roots of trees can be they can spread out quite far, and they can end up right underneath your garden bed, and they could suck all the nutrients and water that's coming down away from your plants. So think about trees when you're thinking about where to plant that garden. Well, that's about what I have for you here today, guys. Sun's starting to go down. My hands are starting to get cold. I really appreciate you checking me out again, joining me for the Garden Side Chat. We will be back again soon. Please hit that subscribe button, notification bell, smash, 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 smash smash, smash, smash the thumbs up, and take care, guys. We will see you soon.